Hey there, my silent confessors. You found your way here, and I promise you won't be leaving anytime soon. This isn't just another story. It's raw, forbidden, and dripping with passion. It's about the choices we make, the secrets we bury, and the desires we can't control. Get comfortable, because what you're about to hear will make your heart race, your skin tingle, and your breath hitch. But trust me, whatever you do, watch until the very end. Because that's where it gets even better. Are you ready? Let's dive into the story of the night that changed everything. Everything shifted the moment Jace, my husband's son, walked into my home. What started as a simple family favor turned into something deeper, something dangerous, electrifying, impossible to ignore. My name is Lila, a 45-year-old woman living in Miami, married to a hardworking but distant man, Ethan. He runs a private security firm, his world consumed by contracts, risks, and responsibilities. He was always gone, traveling, working, immersed in things that didn't include me. So when he told me his son needed a place to stay after his divorce, I barely gave it a second thought. It was family, after all. What harm could there be in that? That was before I saw him. Jace wasn't the boy I remembered. The kid with lanky limbs and a boyish smile had vanished. In his place stood a man, tall, broad-shouldered, exuding an effortless confidence that unsettled me. His smirk was lazy, knowing, like he could sense the way my breath hitched just by looking at him. "Thanks for letting me crash here, Lila," he murmured, his voice rich with amusement, his gaze lingering just long enough to make my stomach tighten. I swallowed hard, willing myself to be indifferent. Of course, make yourself at home. But home didn't feel the same anymore. Jace settled in quickly, too quickly. His presence seemed to expand, filling the house in a way I hadn't expected. Every time I turned a corner, he was there, lounging on the couch, stretching in the kitchen, leaning against the doorway with that maddening, cocky grin. My routine was thrown off balance, and I found myself hyper-aware of his every movement. The way he ran a hand through his dark hair, the way his muscles flexed when he carried groceries, the way his voice dipped when he spoke to me. That night at dinner, he talked about his divorce with an unsettling ease, as if the pain of it had never touched him. He swirled the wine in his glass, his fingers tracing idle patterns against the rim. "Some things aren't meant to last," he said, eyes flicking to mine, his meaning layered, unreadable. I watched him too closely. The way his lips curled into a smirk, the heat in his gaze whenever our eyes met. My skin prickled, my pulse a slow, heavy thud. "You have a different energy about you, Jace," I murmured, the words slipping before I could stop them. He leaned back in his chair, his smirk deepening. "And you haven't changed at all, Lila. Still as stunning as ever." My pulse jumped, a warmth spread through me, unwelcome and undeniable. I should have shut it down. I should have ignored the way his voice wrapped around my name like silk. But I didn't. Instead, I reached for my wine, taking a slow sip, trying to steady myself, trying to pretend I didn't feel the unspoken tension humming between us. But I did. And something told me Jace knew it too. The next morning, I was cleaning the living room when I asked Jace for help moving a cabinet. "It's heavier than it looks," I said. He smirked and stepped forward, his muscles flexing as he grabbed the edge. As we pushed together, our hands brushed. Just a fleeting touch, but enough to set my skin ablaze. I sucked in a breath, pretending not to notice the way his gaze lingered on me. But I did, and I knew he did too. That night, sleep refused to come. I could hear him in the next room, his presence thick in the air. I got up to grab a glass of water, but as I passed by his slightly ajar door, I paused. He was there, sitting on his bed, shirtless, scribbling in a notebook. The dim glow of the lamp cast shadows over his chiseled chest, and for a moment, I felt like an intruder. But I couldn't look away. My body was betraying me, heating with something dangerous. I turned quickly, but I carried that image with me back to bed. The tension between us grew unbearable. One hot afternoon, I stepped outside to bring Jace a drink as he worked out in the backyard. He was shirtless, sweat tracing down every muscle of his torso. When I handed him the glass, our fingers brushed and his lips curled into that knowing smirk. "Thanks, Lila," he murmured, his voice husky, filled with something unspoken. My breath hitched. I turned and rushed inside, but deep down, I knew this wasn't just my imagination. That night, as I finished washing dishes, Jace walked into the kitchen, his presence overwhelming. "Need a hand?" he asked, stepping closer than necessary. The warmth of his body brushed against mine. My hands trembled slightly as I dried the last plate. "No, I got it," I whispered. But he didn't move. I really appreciate everything you've done for me," he said, his voice low, thick with something dangerous. I turned to respond, but he was already stepping away, leaving me breathless. And that's when I knew the line between us was crumbling, fast. The next day, Ethan's sister Camila called. "I'm stopping by, it's been too long," she chirped. Her visits were normal, but something in her tone felt different. When she arrived, Jace opened the door. "Damn, Jace, you've grown up," she said, eyeing him up and down like a meal. His smile was polite but hesitant, and suddenly the air in the house shifted. That evening, Camila poured us all drinks. "It's been forever since we had a real family night," she grinned, sipping from her glass. But her eyes stayed locked on Jace. She leaned in, teasing him about the attention he must get at the gym. "Bet your clients want more than just training tips," she purred, twirling a strand of hair. Jace chuckled, but his eyes flickered toward me. Then Camila turned to me. "Lila and I have always been great at sharing," she whispered, the double meaning unmistakable. A shiver ran through me, a challenge in her eyes, a tension in Jace's posture. Something shifted. Something inevitable. And when I felt Jace's hand brush mine, my body moved before my mind could catch up. Camila smirked, raising her glass to her lips, watching us with a knowing gleam in her eyes. Jace's fingers lingered just a moment too long, sending a spark through my skin. My breath hitched as I dared to meet his gaze, the air between us thick with anticipation. "Lila," Camila purred, swirling her drink, "I think Jace is enjoying all this attention." His smirk deepened, and before I could respond, he reached out, his fingers grazing the inside of my wrist, his touch feather-light but electric. "I don't mind," he murmured, his voice laced with something dark and tempting. Camila chuckled. "Oh, I bet you don't." I should have stood up, I should have walked away. But I didn't. I stayed. The wine, the heat, the unspoken tension, it was all too intoxicating. Jace shifted closer, his body a whisper away from mine, his scent a dizzying mix of sweat and aftershave. My pulse pounded as Camila leaned in, her voice dripping with mischief. "We've always had good taste, haven't we, Lila?" My lips parted, my body betraying me before my mind could intervene, and then, just like that, the night took a turn I could never undo. Jace's hand trailed along my arm, the warmth of his touch lingering long after he pulled away. My breath quickened, my mind racing with thoughts I knew I shouldn't entertain, yet my body refused to resist. Camila's smirk deepened as she leaned back, swirling her drink, watching the tension unfold like a silent spectator of a wicked game. Jace's eyes held mine, challenging, teasing. I could feel the heat radiating from his body, his presence intoxicating in a way that made my stomach tighten. He was too close, and yet not close enough. The moment shattered when Camila stood, stretching lazily. "I think I'll leave you two to sort this out," she murmured, her voice laced with amusement. She walked past me, her fingers grazing my shoulder as she whispered, "Don't fight it, Lila. Some things are meant to happen." As the door clicked shut behind her, silence settled between Jace and me, thick with anticipation. He didn't speak. He didn't have to. Slowly, he reached out, his fingertips ghosting over the curve of my jaw, sending a ripple of desire through me. My breath hitched as he leaned in, his lips hovering just inches from mine. "Tell me you don't want this," he murmured, his voice deep and rough with need. I opened my mouth to protest, but no words came. I should have said no. I should have walked away, but I didn't. Instead, my fingers tangled in his hair, pulling him to me, crashing into a kiss that stole the air from my lungs. His hands found my waist, firm yet exploring, molding me to him as if he had been waiting for this moment just as long as I had. Every inch of my skin burned beneath his touch, igniting a fire that had long been dormant. His tongue teased mine, deepening the kiss, claiming me in a way that sent a shiver down my spine. There was no turning back now. I melted into him, my body arching against his as his hands roamed, memorizing every curve, every reaction. He lifted me effortlessly, carrying me to the couch, his weight pressing down on me, grounding me in the reality of what was about to happen. My pulse pounded in my ears as his lips left a heated trail down my neck, his breath hot against my skin. I gasped when his teeth grazed my collarbone, my fingers digging into his shoulders, pulling him closer, needing more. The room disappeared. The world outside ceased to exist. All that mattered was this moment, this forbidden desire we had no control over. His name fell from my lips in a breathless whisper as he captured my mouth again, his hands slipping beneath my blouse, his touch sending waves of pleasure through me. I knew this was dangerous. I knew it was wrong. But as his body pressed against mine, as his kisses grew hungrier, as my own hands sought him with equal desperation, I realized something I could no longer deny. I wanted him, I needed him, and there was no stopping now. If you made it to the end, you know this was more than just a story. It was a confession, a temptation, a taste of something forbidden. What would you have done in Lila's place? Let me know in the comments. And if you're craving more stories that make your heart race and your skin tingle, hit that subscribe button now, because trust me, this is just the beginning. Are you still breathing? Because this is just the beginning. The tension, the secrets, the forbidden desires, they're only getting deeper. What do you think happens next? Drop a comment, hit that like button, and if you haven't already, subscribe. Trust me, you don't want to miss what's coming. It's only going to get hotter.